Model Rockets 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. There it goes. Parachute. All right, guys. Model Rockets 3, 2, 1 here. This is the Model Rockets 3, 3, 2, 1 live show. Well, it's not live anymore. This is the upload version of it. And it's going to dive right in. Today I have a special guest, Mr. James Duffy, someone I've been following in the hobby for a little while. I would get the Sport Rocketry magazines and I would see him in there. And once I saw that he was into the Mercury Little Joe 1s, it made me dig a little deeper. And I found this documentary that he put out, and I purchased it right away some years ago. And he is the creator of that documentary. A lot of vintage footage, but we'll let him get all into that. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, Keith, it's great to finally meet up with you and chat about model rockets. I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, for sure. We're gonna dive deep. But before we dive really deep, I just want to go. We're gonna go back. So where were you born and raised? Where are you from?
So I'm originally a Texan. My parents moved here many years ago when I was about a year old, and like many of the I don't want to say the older guys, the more seasoned guys in this hobby. I'm one of those Apollo era kids. We lived in Houston when I was very young, and so I was immersed in the history of Apollo from an early age. When Apollo 11 landed on the moon, I lived in Houston, not too far away. I was 4.5 years old at the time, and I vividly remember my parents coming to get me out of bed that July night to see these two fuzzy figures bounce around on what was supposedly the moon. The video quality was great, but it was still cool.
Yes.
And I remember it vividly. And that had such a profound impact on my life that I remember it distinctly. There was this hobby shop in Houston in a place called Sharpstown Mall. Mm-hmm. My family used to go to the mall on the weekends, and I want to say it was called the G&G Hobby Shop. Maybe some old Houston people can talk about it. And they had model rockets hanging from the ceiling in this place. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was the coolest thing imaginable.
Nice.
And I would bug my parents to, hey, buy me a model rocket. Please buy me a model rocket. It seems like I said that for years. Finally, when I was about 7 years old, maybe, they bought a starter kit for me for my birthday one year.
Before you say what kit that is, don't reveal yet. I have one question. Okay. What company were those kits by?
Oh, it was Estes.
Those were Estes, okay.
So, yeah, we're going to get into this a little more, I hope. There were Estes kids growing up, and there were Centauri kids growing up.
Yes, we are.
Okay? It was like the Crips and the Bloods.
Yes.
Okay? the vocabulary was the same, but everything was different.
Yes.
So, my buddy Steve Crystal and I talk about this all the time. He grew up in Phoenix, which was a Centauri town because the company was based there.
Right, Lee Peaster.
He talks about being shocked and offended to find this other brand of model rockets called Estes in the hobby shop. And why would anyone want these when we've got these wonderful Centauri kits to build? So, yeah, but I was definitely an Estes guy.
Okay, for sure. Now, what was that first starter set you got?
I remember it vividly. There was this pre-tripod starter set that Estes had that had a square red plastic base that held 8 photo flash batteries. It's a type of battery that I don't even think you can buy anymore. And it came with an alpha kit, not an alpha 3, an alpha kit. You actually had to hack the fins out of balsa and glue them onto the body tube and wait for the glue to dry and hope you might get it straight as you glue it onto the body tube there. And it came with several little cans of paint, little jars, little tester style bottles of paint, and it came with a little like a hot sauce hot sauce packet, filled with white glue. Wow! And I don't remember that's hitting the way back button right there
for sure.
But I remember that vividly, and that was the catalyst. From there on, it was a slippery slope, and I want to say that was like 72, 73.
Okay.
And I have built and flown at least one model rocket every year of my life since then.
Wow, you just wiped off like 4 or 5 questions off my list. The one of the main ones I was going to ask you is, were you ever a bar? You know what that is?
Yeah, I do know. Born again Rocketeer.
Yes. So
I cannot claim to being a model born again Rocketeer because I never left.
You never left. Yeah. Okay. So you stayed. Right. Right. Okay. So that took care of that question. But go ahead. Continue.
I was always, excuse me, I've got an upper respiratory thing. I was in New York last weekend, and I think the diesel fumes there, and I don't know if you've been to New York lately, but everybody's out on the street smoking dope. Wow. Everybody.
Oh, it's
everywhere you go.
Legal now,
it's like cigarette smoke.
Wow.
It's the semi-legal thing, and it just didn't sit with me.
Right.
Respiratory wise. But everybody was having a good time, so I'm not going to complain.
Right.
So I've built and flown at least one rocket every year of my life since that time. Awesome. And it's been a lot of fun. There were years where I might have only built and flown one.
Okay.
But I can point to every year along the way and say that I've kept my hand in the hobby, and I've really enjoyed it. Now, here's the important thing. Here's what made a huge difference for me. I was always a lone Rocketeer. There may have been a few kids in the neighborhood growing up who built and flew some rockets.
Same here.
But I was always by myself. And that changed dramatically in 1998.
Okay.
When I found a Usenet group called rec.models.rockets.
Okay.
And a local guy named Lee James here in Austin, I live in the Austin area, said, hey, is there any interest in putting together a rocket group here in Austin? And I said, sure, let's try to make that happen. And as part of that, and under Lee's leadership in that early first bit, we started what is today now known as the Austin Area Rocketry Group.
Okay.
And that club is both a NAR chartered section and a Tripoli chartered prefect. We are celebrating our 25th year as an ongoing concern, and we've never been bigger.
Wow.
We've never been healthier. And finding that local community of people to build and fly rockets with really changed things for me for the better. And that led me to the national organization. I'm very active in the NAR on a national level.
Very nice. Getting
to go to the national events and making some of the greatest friends of my life as a result of all that.
Sounds good. So what led you to, how did you get into scale? How did you become like a kind of a master scale builder? When did that get going?
So that's a great question. So what really led me down that path was, it's kind of a two-part answer. One, I've always been fascinated by the history of aerospace, not just rockets and missiles, but also aircraft as well. There's an intersection of art and science and history that comes together there that just fascinates me. And as a result, I like rockets that have stories behind them.
Yes.
I love a great story. I think I'm a pretty good storyteller myself. And that intersection where everything comes together is right there's that sweet spot where scale model rocketry takes place.
Nice. You mentioned aviation and things that fly. Do you have a favorite jet or plane?
My favorite airplane is the one I'm on now. I'll say that. I have a commercial pilot's license.
Wow.
I've never flown professionally a day in my life. Have no intent to, but I always wanted to know if I could have flown professionally. So in recent years, I've gone out and gotten the instrument and commercial ratings kind of to verify that for me. So it was kind of a personal goal. So I love the mighty Cessna 172.
Nice.
I love those aircraft, but But any aircraft with a great story, I will tell you what I think is the most beautiful aircraft of all time. We're going to get really. This is deep right here. Okay, this is a deep cut. Okay, this is an obscure album cut that only the true fans are aware of. Okay, so you have the F-86.
Okay.
The F-86 was also co-developed in a parallel fashion as a naval aircraft called the FJ, and there were 4 in that series. One was not explicitly the same design, the FJ-1, but the FJ-2, 3, and 4 were all variants of the F-86 design, optimized for use on carrier aircraft.
Oh, nice.
The FJ-4, I think, is the most beautiful aircraft ever built. It's got this swoopy comic strip look to it.
Okay.
That is just magnificent. So go Google that. The North American FJ-4.
I will look that up right now. Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, it's sweet.
Oh, it's got a little more elegance than the traditional F-86. Bigger tail. There's a little bit of a rake to the canopy position.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful aircraft.
Yeah, those are sweet. Yeah, those are sweet. Yeah, I love those. Those are sweet. Nice. Yeah, so moving things right along, similar in the same fashion question, what led you to the Little Joe 1? I know you've done a lot of those, and it's kind of like one of my tops, probably because of you. That I've scaled some myself, some smaller ones, but what led you to
Wonderful.
that?
It's great to know that I introduced somebody to a gateway drug.
Sure.
Okay, so the Little Joe 1, the Mercury Little Joe, is one of those odd little pockets of aerospace history that just fascinates me. Not a lot of people are aware of it. Many years ago, just after I started flying with a club, I learned that there was a guy up in, I want to say Michigan. His name was Yita Wu.
I know him, yes.
And, okay, you've heard the name.
I built those are the plans. I don't know if you know Mo Bertrand. He flies out here. Matt knows him. He gave me the plans to it because he knew I was getting all crazy about it. And he gave me the plan. He gave me the Yita Wu plans. And I scratched from there.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yep. But continue. Sorry.
What Yita did was do some basic math and figure out you could take a section of BT-70 tubing, a section of the Centauri 2-inch tubing that comes with the standard Mercury Redstone kit, and that plastic Centauri / Estes Mercury capsule, and kind of kit bash all that together into a very accurate replica of one of the LJ5 rounds of the Mercury Redstone, or excuse me, the Mercury Little Joe. Just for your listeners, let's hit on what Little Joe was supposed to do.
There we go.
This was early days of the space program, and they didn't want to commit human lives to untested hardware. The whole idea of using an escape tower to pull a space capsule away from a malfunctioning booster was all very new. And they needed a way to test the feasibility of that idea on an inexpensive basis. So what they did is they took a Mercury capsule with its escape tower on top and placed it on top of a very inexpensive, crudely built booster, which was called Little Joe. It was hacked together by North American on a very inexpensive, low-dollar budget, and used surplus sounding rocket motors, or missile motors, to power it. It was unguided. They would simply plop this on a tilted launcher on the Virginia shore, ignite the motors, shoot it out over the ocean, and when they hit certain performance criteria, they would ignite the escape tower and allow that to pull the capsule free of the booster. So that's the background behind that.
Yep.
It was a very successful program.
Yep, that's
I went down after building that Yita Wu kit, I just was so intrigued by the idea and the possibilities of that type of scale model that it started a series of multiple iterations of the model that I was able to build over many, many years. I have probably built 15 Little Joes over the last 23, 24 years.
Wow.
And in a variety of scales. The ultimate version of it I built for the World Space Modeling Championships, which were held in Ukraine in 2016. Mm-hmm. It is a 4.5 foot tall, 1/12 scale replica of Little Joe LJ-1A, which flew on November 4th, 1959. It used a very simple prototype of the Mercury capsule without the traditional corrugations on it. Mm-hmm. The model is entirely scratch built. The tubing is a custom outside diameter made from rolled 64th inch plywood. Wow. I had access to a laser cutter at the time through a makerspace that I was a member of here. Mm-hmm. It took over a year to build. I'm trying to think of some of the performance specs. It stands 4.5 feet tall, yet it only weighs 3 pounds. Wow, nice. It's absolutely immense.
What motors did it fly on? I saw it clusters. I saw it. I saw images.
It's got the weirdest cluster you've ever heard of in your life. It flies on 2 Aerotech F-52-4 motors as the primary motive force. And then there are 4 outbound A10 PTs, Estes A10 PTs.
Yeah.
It mimics the motor arrangement of that particular round of the Little Joe series. There's also a motor in the base of the capsule to simulate the escape tower operation.
Wow.
That's ignited by a Perfect Flight Mini Timer 4.
It did it?
I've flown it a couple times.
Okay, there you go.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so it performed, and it did it. Pulled the capsule off?
Oh, absolutely. Wow. It flew it at the World Championships there in 2016. Mm-hmm. It landed on a Jumbotron, of all things. That's one of my claims to fame. But the flight was successful. It was well judged. I want to say I ended up in 10th place in the competition, 10th or 11th, somewhere in that neighborhood. But it was one of the high points of my rocketry experience, and I'm
ask you that.
I'm glad I did it.
So if you did that and that was 10th, what was first? Do you remember the winner?
I don't remember who won that year.
Okay.
I will tell you point blank that in international competition, you've really got to be flying a 3-stage prototype.
Wow. And
it has to be a clustered 3-stage prototype.
Man.
Most of the people who win seem to be flying either Saturn 1Bs or Soyuz or various Ariane variants.
These are the best of the best.
These are the best of the best. I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm not best of the best, but I'm
you're pretty high up there. I'll toot it for you.
Below them, okay?
Every time you go to scale, when I start looking at scale stuff, your name comes up in Google, guys. Just Google James Duffy when it comes to scale modeling and competition stuff. He pops up. But
and
wow,
my name
that's
will
great
pop
stuff.
up.
Yeah,
I broke the algorithm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're in there. So let's dive into some model rocket kits. I put a video up a while ago. I said I know the greatest model rocket of all time. So I just want to get your take. For me, these guys on here know, I went with Mars Lander and Little Joe 2. Those are my top 2. When it comes to the kits, do you have any grails? Because you've done it longer, so I just want to see any grails for you.
So there are no unbuilt grails for me now. For the longest time,
for sure.
The grail kit that I could never seem to lay my hands on was the Estes Maxi Brood Pershing 1A kit.
Okay. Maybe.
And I would keep an eye out for it on eBay, and every time I found one on eBay, the price would just get stupid, and I'd wave off.
Yeah.
And after years of that, I kind of resigned myself to the fact that it's never going to happen. I'm not going to worry about it. And apparently, I talked earlier about what great friends I've made in this hobby. Several years ago, a few days before Christmas, a package just showed up from my good friend Steve Crystal.
Okay.
And I had kidded Steve for years about the number of kits that he had bought over the years. He literally has pallets of kits in his garage. Wow. And I would ask him over and over again, Steve, what's the end game? What do you hope to accomplish buying all this stuff? Yeah. And I opened up this box from Steve, and there was a battered old Pershing 1A kit inside there. I opened it up. Nice. It had been started by somebody. Steve came in possession of it. And inside the box, he had printed out a giant printout that simply said, "End game."
Nice.
And
real good.
It's one of the greatest gifts I've ever received from anyone in my life. Wow. This kit was torn to hell. Yeah, somebody had started this kit and got frustrated halfway through and threw it in the box and forgot about it for 30 years.
Wow, nice.
So I kind of did a triage on what was in the box. The toughest part of the kit to replicate, the nose cone, was in perfect condition.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I worked up some laser cut fins. I bought a new BT-101 main airframe tube.
I was going to ask you what tube that was. Yeah.
It's BT-101. It's that 4-inch lightweight Estes tubing.
Gotcha.
And I laser cut stencils for the markings. I like painted markings as opposed to decals for the most part. That's a whole podcast unto itself.
Oh, wow. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. And built the most beautiful Pershing 1A thanks to my good friend Steve Crystal. Another good friend, Mike Nowak, did the laser cutting on the fins for me. I just drew up the fin files in Illustrator, and Mike did the laser cutting for me. And this Pershing 1A is magnificent. Sweet. If you go on Rocketry Forum and just search Pershing 1A, there's a build thread where I document the build of that model. But that was my grail.
That's your grail.
Now, one kit you mentioned a moment ago is one of your favorites. Yeah. I think the greatest model rocket kit ever produced commercially by anyone is the Estes Little Joe 2 kit, the Apollo Little Joe kit that came out about 6 or 7 years ago.
1/45th scale?
The 1/45th scale. I think that is the most.
I bought 10 of. I think I have more than. I have a bunch of them. I have a built one, then I just have them in boxes. I have some, and I have the Century version in the box.
Completely different ball game. A lot of the same parts.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
completely different ball game.
Yeah, the Century. Mine is shrink wrapped and it's sealed. It's sitting on the shelf right here. I have it. So
nice. I always thought that was just a magnificent kit, and I enjoyed building it. I was part of a very extensive collaborative build thread on Rocketry Forum over that. There were all kinds of people jumping in. George Gassaway and I seemed to lead the charge in documenting our builds. The late, great John Pursley jumped in at one point and shared some of his wisdom. I think it's one of the most viewed threads in the history of that website ever.
Nice.
So if you ever want to build the Estes Little Joe 2,
I have it built.
Go find that thread.
Okay.
It's a great intro to a serious scale project, and here's why. One, it's easy to build, relatively easy to build. Second, it's just challenging enough that you know you've accomplished something. And third, it flies great when you're done.
Oh, for sure.
It looks magnificent.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Yeah, I built mine when I first got it, and I just loaded up on a bunch of them because I knew Estes they'll pull stuff out of production. Really quick question. We go back to Mercury Little Joe 1. Did you have your hands in designing that with Estes?
I'm not going to say I designed it. It's basically the Yita Wu kit produced by Estes.
Okay, for sure.
I will share that a couple of years before the Mercury Little Joe kit came out from Estes, John Boren of Estes reached out to me and asked for scale data, and he wanted to pick my brain on making their own. And I shared some thoughts and discussed the Yita Wu garage kit with him. The one thing I think I can point to in that kit that is me is the United States marking that goes down the side of the airframe.
Yeah.
Is a unique marking that is not based on any existing font.
I didn't think so.
What
it's
I
these little
did,
segments, right?
Right. It's all those strange little segments. I took my original Illustrator artwork file for that marking and scaled it down to the 1/34th scale of the Estes kit and just shared that with Estes.
Nice.
And I'm pretty sure that the marking in that kit uses my original decal art because it's identical to what I sent.
Oh, that's cool. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, where is Yuto Wu? Is he around still?
I believe he lives in Michigan. I know Steve Crystal has mentioned that he flies with them occasionally. A story Steve's shared is that Utah developed these really slick launch controllers for them using recovered single-use cameras. You remember the old single-use 35-millimeter cameras?
Yeah.
It's tell you a camera for $10 that had film in it.
Yes.
They had an electronic flash on it. And Utah would go to the local Walgreens at the photo lab and get the recovered flash units and build launch systems out of it, which I always thought was a cool idea.
Yeah.
I've never seen one in action, but it's something I'd like to see.
Speaking of camera rockets, as a youth, I was a kid in the 80s. I had the Astrocam 110. Never got it to work.
Right.
Never got it to work. You?
I was in my 20s in the 80s and never got it to work.
Okay.
I got a couple blurry photos.
Yeah, I tried over and over. I could just never get it. I just could never get it to go. But okay, I don't feel so bad now. But I like the Astrocam. But now we have digital stuff. But
today we have the digital stuff. And, it's interesting you mentioned that. So whenever I fly a sport model now, or even a scale model for fun, I take one of the little thumb drive sized Estes Astrocam units.
Yep.
And I'll take some gaffer tape and stick it on the side.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And the quality of image you get out of that is remarkable.
Yep. Yes.
And you think, heck, 20 years ago, NASA couldn't get footage that high quality.
Yeah, we're doing it now. And then you had the Astron the Omega, which I'm currently flying around right now. Love the Omega, man. That thing stages so well. You own the Omega?
I'm looking at one on my shelf here right now.
Okay.
It's a replica with a 3D printed Cinerock nose cone. My good friend Jim Filler sent me that nose cone, and I kit bashed the Omega to go underneath it.
There you go.
And I haven't flown it yet. I need to fly that.
Yeah, I've flown mine recently with I run the Astrocam on the side, and I got the fins popping off. It's nice. Nice footage.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, you can see the whole thing. But yeah, stuff is really, really good now. So yeah, to keep this moving right along. So are you certed? You have your high power?
I've got a level 1 cert.
Okay, me too.
I can count the number of times I've flown high power on one hand.
Okay.
I love high power.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
I'm a member of a club that is primarily a high power club. We've got a couple of the most prominent high power flyers in America.
Yeah.
Jim Jarvis with his active stability stuff that he's doing. He prototypes a lot of that stuff at our launches. Stu Barrett, former president of Tripoli, is in our club. So yeah, I get to see a lot of high power. I love it, and I'm happy to support those guys all day long as they fly. It's just it's a path I've never followed.
Same here. I got mine. I got my 4-inch Iris. I got some other big ones. Be sure to visit the Model Rockets 321 Space Shop for logo tees, mugs, and other space-related merchandise.